Today, we are diving into a story that sits right at this really dangerous intersection of geopolitics, drug trafficking, and, well, what some are calling weaponized justice.
Exactly. We're talking about Juan Orlando Hernández, JOH, the former president of Honduras.
And here's the paradox that hooks you right away. This is a man who was once, celebrated by U.S. administrations as a key anti-narco ally.
A champion, even. And yet, he ends up convicted in a U.S. federal court on these massive drug charges.
And that conviction, as you, the listener, will see, is really just the beginning of the story. The ultimate twist, of course, was the pardon from President Trump.
Right. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're sorting through two completely opposed narratives. On one side, you have the U.S. federal charges, drug kingpin, leader of a narco state.
And on the other, JOH's own claim that this was all a political frame-up, a lawfare operation by the radical left and the deep state.
So we're going to unpack the sources that lay out the evidence for both sides. Because this isn't just about one man. It's about understanding how power, justice, and the drug trade all get tangled up in the Western Hemisphere.
Let's start with the accusations because they are just staggering. The federal prosecutors essentially argued that JOH was running Honduras as his own personal narco state for his entire presidency. That's 2014 to 2022.
And when they say narco state, they don't just mean a little corruption on the side. They mean the government itself was basically a tool for the cartels. The charge was that he helped funnel something like 400 tons of cocaine into America.
400 tons. I mean, it's an almost unbelievable volume.
And it gets more specific. They claimed he took $1 million bribe directly from El Chapo.
The El Chapo.
The one and only. And that he took millions more to fund his 2013 campaign. So the picture they're painting is of total top-to-bottom corruption.
But this is where the whole thing just splits wide open, right? Because JOH's entire defense is built on his own actions in office, which seem to completely contradict that narrative.
Exactly. He argues he made himself the cartel's #1 enemy. And to understand that, you have to look at the laws he passed. The biggest one, by far, was amending the Honduran Constitution.
Which had been in place for, what, almost 100 years?
Almost a century. And it basically said you could not extradite a Honduran national for drug crimes. It was a shield for the kingpins.
And he got rid of it. I mean, think about the political risk there. He knew that by opening the door to sending these guys to the U.S., he was putting a target on his own back.
A huge target on him and his family. And he didn't just pass the law, he used it. He extradited about 30 major drug traffickers.
Okay, so that's a pretty big piece of counter-evidence, but it wasn't just that, was it?
No, not at all. He pushed through a whole suite of anti-crime laws. There was the anti-money laundering law, an asset seizing law, which was huge. It meant the government could finally go after the cartel's money and property inside Honduras.
And then there's the really controversial one, the one that caused a lot of friction with the U.S. State Department, the shooting down law.
Right. This was aimed at all those illegal drug planes flying into Honduras, mostly from places like Venezuela. They'd use the airspace to drop their cargo.
And his argument was basically, we have to stop this at the source.
He just said, look, we're making it official policy. You fly an illegal drug plane into our sovereign airspace, we will use force to bring it down. And this is where it gets really fascinating, because the sources have hard data on what happened next.
Okay, let's get into the metrics, because this is what JOH's supporters point to as proof. Let's start with public safety, the homicide rate.
Yeah, look at the intentional homicide rate per 100,000 people. Before he was in power, back in 2011, 2012, the rate was at 83 and 82.
That's basically a war zone, one of the highest murder rates on the planet.
Absolute. A society just totally destabilized by crime. But by the end of his presidency, in 2020 and 2021, that number had dropped to 34 and 38.
Wait, so it's cut by more than half?
Well over 50%.
Yeah.
And the argument from his side is simple. You don't get that kind of result if the president himself is secretly running the show for the cartels.
And what about the drug transit? Did that shooting down law actually work?
The data is even more dramatic there. Before the law, Honduras was seeing about 300 illegal drug flights a year. That's almost one a day. After the law was enforced, it dropped to just 2 flights. 2. It basically shut down that entire air corridor.
And these aren't just his numbers, right? This isn't just his administration putting out press releases.
No, and that's the crucial part. The sources showed that his government was certified every single year as a reliable partner by U.S. agencies. We're talking the DEA, the Coast Guard, U.S. Customs.
U.S. Southern Command, Southcom too, right?
Southcom data confirmed it. By 2020, they reported a drastic reduction in drug flow through Honduras. They even said the traffic had been pushed to other countries, like Costa Rica and Guatemala.
So this is the central conflict. How can a leader who is slashing murder rates, shutting down drug routes, and getting praised by the DEA, how can he simultaneously be the region's biggest drug dealer?
And that's what forces you to look at the politics. This is the core of JOH's lawfare claim. He definitely had, let's say, friction with the U.S. Democratic administration.
Over his methods, specifically, they called it the militarization of security.
Right. He created this military police force to handle street security, and he was very aggressive with that shoot-down policy. His defense was that the regular police were too corrupt to be trusted. He was in the process of purging nearly 60% of the force.
And he also argues his conservative politics didn't help. Backing Trump on moving the embassy to Jerusalem, things like that. He claims it put him at odds with the U.S. political left.
But the real smoking gun, from his perspective, is the timing of the indictment.
This part is just incredible. The indictment was filed on the exact same day.
The very same day that Vice President Kamala Harris was in Honduras for the inauguration of the new president, Xiomara Castro.
You can't see that as a coincidence.
It's very hard to. It suggests, or at least he alleges it suggests, a coordinated political move. Get the old conservative leader out of the way as you welcome in the new leftist one.
And he flips the script, too. He throws the accusation of narco ties right back at the new government.
He does. He points to this video clip that surfaced. It allegedly shows Carlos Zelaya, who is the brother-in-law of the current president, a very powerful figure in her party meeting with leaders from the Cachiros cartel.
And what are they supposedly talking about?
Bribes. Over $500,000 in bribes. And the alleged purpose was to make sure the radical left won the election so they could get rid of the extradition law.
The very law that JOH put in place.
The exact same one.
Yeah.
So that provides a pretty clear motive for the cartels to want him out and his opposition in.
Okay, but we have to address the elephant in the room. His own brother, Tony Hernandez. He was convicted in the U.S. They had evidence, like cocaine bricks stamped with a TH logo.
And that's an undeniable fact. His brother was convicted. JOH's side doesn't deny that Tony was, exposed to these kinds of people. They grew up in a very dangerous area. But he insists the evidence was flawed, both in his brother's trial and his own.
Based on what?
Based on coerced testimony. For instance, he claims the prosecution knew El Chapo wasn't even in Central America when that alleged $1 million bribe happened, but they ignored that detail. Which brings us to the witnesses themselves.
Right, because the entire case against a former president rested almost entirely on the word of who, exactly?
Convicted narcos, murderers, hitmen, all of whom got these incredible plea deals. Take the star witness, Alexander Ardon.
What's his story?
Ardon admitted under oath to being personally responsible for 57 murders. 57.
And what was his sentence for testifying against JOH?
Time served. Less than 6 years. He walked free. JOH calls it a jail-free card. He argues the U.S. gave these guys men he put away a get-out-of-jail-free card if they would just point a finger at him.
The incentive to lie would be, astronomical.
It couldn't be higher. And the story just gets stranger from there, with his time in prison awaiting trial.
Yeah, the anecdotes are wild. He claims he was deliberately moved to a high-security prison, Hazleton, right before Trump left office.
And that inmates from gangs like MS-13 and Latin Kings warned him that he was a target, that people might be asked to stab him because he was seen as, law enforcement.
And then he ends up in the jail in Brooklyn.
At the MDC in Brooklyn, yeah. And he's in there with, Diddy, Tekashi, 6ix9ine, and Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF.
The SBF connection is maybe the most shocking part of this whole thing. The FTX founder.
It's surreal. SBF not only helped JOH go over his own trial evidence, but he later went on the record with this unbelievable quote. He said, JOH was the most innocent prisoner I've met, including myself.
He called him probably the most effective anti-cartel leader in the world. Coming from another high-profile inmate, that's a powerful statement.
And it all feeds into JOH's final claim, that this was never about justice. It was politics. It was lawfare to get rid of a conservative leader whose policies were working too well. He says he has lived the reality of the deep state.
He also describes immense personal pressure, too. The Biden administration apparently took his family's visas away so they couldn't even attend his trial.
Which is a courtesy, he notes, that was given to the families of actual narcos. It all seems designed to isolate him.
So if we pull all these threads together, you, the listener, are left with two completely different realities. On one hand, you have published U.S.-verified data showing massive drops in violence and drug trafficking.
And on the other, You have a conviction that rests almost entirely on the testimony of admitted murderers who were given their freedom in exchange for that testimony.
It really forces you to ask, were all those successes on the ground just a smokescreen for a criminal enterprise? Or were those successes the very reason he was targeted?
And the pardon from President Trump is the final confusing piece of the puzzle. It's a political act that basically says, we don't buy the judicial finding. It shows that even at the highest levels of U.S. power, there was this profound disagreement over whether he was a hero or a villain.
So the question this deep dive leaves us with isn't really about just one man. It's about the system. It's about the reliability of international law enforcement when politics are involved.
Right. And here's the final thought for you to chew on. If political opponents can successfully use the justice system, relying on the testimony of cartel killers, to take down a foreign leader who was, by many U.S. metrics, effectively fighting those same cartels, how much power do geopolitical agendas, rather than just the raw facts, actually hold over the rule of law?